Okay. So everyone can see my homepage, can't they?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, what we're going to do today, we're going to run through user admin, so adding the users on, and we're going to run through adding residents onto the system as well. What we'll do is use your live site. So if you have details of a resident that we can add on to the system, just so I can demonstrate, but also we can get your first resident up and running. We'll also get you guys added onto the system, so you've got your login details. We will do that first. So to do that, to add on a user onto the system, we are going to admin on the top bar at the top. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah. Perfect. Now, sometimes you can't see my drop down, but can you see that drop down that's appeared on the screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. So in order to go to add your users on, we're going to go to users, but before I do that, I just kind of want to run through the roles, the different roles that we have on the system. So I'm actually going to go into user roles to begin with. Give it a second. Okay, so we have different user roles on the system. Basically what the different roles have are permissions to different parts of the system. We have default ones already on the system, but you can create custom roles if you wanted to. Most people do go with the default ones, but you have that option to create the custom roles should you want to. Just to run through, so an administrator, if I show you the permissions, an administrator has access to all functionality on the system. So they can add users, they can add residents, they can do meds rounds, they can edit the MAR charts, they can add medicines on, they can do essentially everything on the system. You then have administrator with no review. So the no review means that you wouldn't be able to approve any medication. So you can do everything else, but they wouldn't be able to approve any medication. You then have a caregiver. So the most common used role is caregiver, with review, without review, and then your administrator. So these are your most common ones. Your caregiver, please excuse me, bit of a sore throat. Your caregiver has access to your meds round, has access to viewing resident information, but they can't edit it. They have access to recording anything. So like I say, in the meds round, they can record treatments, they can record vital signs, anything like that. But they don't have access to adding any users onto the system. And then they can record other tasks within the system. So stock check, drugs disposal, dashboard. But the caregiver on its own cannot approve medication. So if you wanted your user to be able to do all of that and approve the medication, you want them under caregiver with review, because it's that with review that gives them the access to approve medication so that it can then be given on the drugs round. You then also got read only. So this one would be used for a witness signature only. They have no access to any part of the system bar the resident documents. So essentially, when you're in a meds round, you need to give a CD drug, and it's usually, say, a carer that would be that witness signature. They would be able to put their login details, so they have a login detail as a read-only user. It would sign them off as a witness, but they would have no access to any other part of the system. Okay. And then supervisor, I believe this is just a different wording for administrator. Yeah, that has access to everything. So your supervisor and your administrator are exactly the same. It would just be the wording that you'd prefer to use. Okay, so any questions on the roles? Nope. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to start adding some users on. Let's go to admin, and I'm going to go to that users. Okay, so in order to add our, you can see we've got nobody on the system at the moment. In order to add on our users, we are going to press our green plus. and it just opens up all these fields for us. So can I just check before I start adding people on, have we got John and Sandra still there?
It's just Sandra. John's left.
Okay. Who, if I go through and start adding people on, do you want to let me know what role you want them to have?
Yeah.
Or do you want me to just add one, say you on, just to demonstrate how to add on, and then let you add everybody else on?
Add a job log or add
me, and then I can add everyone else.
We'll do it that way then. So I'll add yourself on as an administrator, so you have access to all of the system, okay?
Right.
Right. Okay, so what you do is you choose the role for the person. You're going to put your details in. Sandra, what's your surname?
Reynolds.
Right, is that R-E-Y?
Yeah. N-O-L-D-S.
Like that, yeah. So once you put the first name in and the last name in, if you click straight down to the next field, it will automatically produce your initials, which is what will show up on a printed mar chart. Throughout the system, the, excuse me, I just need to go off. Sorry about that, guys. It will automatically in the system, wherever you're working, it will show your full name. So you will, for auditing purposes, know exactly who's done what because it will say their full name. The initials here is just used on a printed mar chart. Also, if there was somebody with the same initials, what it would do is then take the first initial, the first initial of the surname, and then the second letter of the surname as well. So your username then, the way the system works, it's kind of a collative community. So it will remember usernames, not just for your home, but from across the entire estate of people that are using the system. So we have to make it quite unique to your home. The best way to do that is we usually follow the format of, say, first name at, and it would be Applecross. Are you happy to go with that, or do you want it different? How would you want that formulated?
Yeah, just go with my name and at Applecross Nursing Home.
Should we go with the first name at Applecross? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm not sure if you're talking, but I can't hear you.
your mic should be on.
That's on.
Okay. What I'll do is I'll set your initial password as something really easy. And then Sandra, once you're on the system, you need to log in and change that. It will prompt you because I'm going to use this little tick box here. So I'm going to make it password. I wouldn't advise you keep that password because it's a bit easy. When you're setting up your users, make sure once you're giving them that temporary password, you tick this require password reset at next login, because that's just going to force them, once they log in, to change that password to something more unique to themselves. And then once you've filled in all those details, you just press the green tick and it adds them into the list here. In terms of your users, once you've started generating your users, if you have people that start to leave, or they go on maternity leave, or for whatever reason you don't want them to have access to the system anymore, you would just highlight them. And then you could use this user inactive tick box. So if you was to tick that and save it, it would put them in an inactive list and they wouldn't have access to the system anymore. If people forget their passwords and they lock themselves out, they will automatically sit under this user inactive list. So to reinstate them, you would go into your list of users. At the bottom here, you've got your display inactive, and it would just bring up all your inactive users. You would highlight them, and then you would tick the inactive user to reinstate them basically. So if that would be if you're resetting the password, they've got themselves locked out, or if it's somebody coming back from maternity leave, or somebody's coming back into the business that's previously been in the business, that's what you would do. Any questions on that?
No.
Nope.
I'm going to take the silence as a no. Okay. Essentially, that's as easy as it is for user admin. So if there's no further questions on the user admin, the next steps for you, Sandra, would be to go through and add on your users, giving them the different roles as appropriate for them. Okay. Next, we are going to look at adding on a resident. So to do that, we are going to go to residents and orders.
That one.
Now, essentially, because your pharmacy will be sending data over, they can generate the residents for you automatically when they send the data over. So it's up to you whether you want to go on and add your residents in prior to start adding certain information in, or you can wait until the data comes over. It's completely up to you. But once you come into your residents and orders screen, you want to come to profile at the top. And then you've got your new resident button down at the bottom. Once you click on that new resident button, it brings up all these boxes for you to start filling out, basically. So you just start working through the relevant information boxes. So do you have, Sandra, a resident that you want to add on now?
Can you hear us? No. Do me a favour and pull that plug at the front of that computer.
Does anybody have a resident they want to add on now?
Let me see. Make it a bit quiet.
No, I'll add on a test patient.
Can you hear us?
Okay. Oh, don't want that.
I think they do have somebody, but you just can't hear
First
them.
name test.
We're trying.
Last name default. Preferred name would be anything that they prefer to be called. So we just put test in there. And then we just go through and fill out the rest of the details. So our resident's going to be female, date of birth, let's say. Now with your date of birth, you can use the calendar to go back to the month and the year. I find it a lot easier just to free type.
They do have a resident.
Hello. Technology's a wonderful thing when it
The
works.
admission date will, as default, put today's date, but you can change that to when they originally entered the home.
Can you
Your
hear
doctor,
us?
so you can start free typing. Once you've been using it for a while, it will remember your doctors that you've got in there. To begin with,
It's to do with us. It's not to do with us.
these are the default dummy ones that are in there, but to begin with, you would want to start adding in your relevant doctors. That data, like I say, as it comes over from the pharmacy, it will start automatically accruing them. But if you do need to add a new doctor in, you just press the little blue man and you can fill in the details of that. The only mandatory boxes here would be first name, last name, and postcode.
Type LEIGHLI.
Your room numbers, you would just put in the relevant room number, so if I put that in there. Then you would choose the relevant med trolley that they're going into. And then again, allergies, diagnosis and diet will be sent over from the pharmacy if they have the relevant information, but you can amend it at this point if you wanted to add them on.
Then you can call the audio.
Hi, it's Sandra.
Dial that number.
We are. Right, okay, thanks. Hi, it's Sandra.
Okay, and then at the bottom, we have primary pharmacy. So as your default, as your main pharmacy is Houlihan Pharmacy, they sit there at the top of the list, but you have other options if they've come from elsewhere.
Well, that's good.
Other points to note on, we've got the status. So to begin with, before you go live, it's probably wise just to put everybody in facility because then they'll all be ready for your go live day. Once you're using the system, this is how you're going to discharge or mark them as planned, coming into the residence.
Becky can hear us.
So we will leave ours in facility, but if they've been discharged, you would choose discharge. You could put a discharge date in there if it's a planned discharge, and then they will come out of the facility and go into a list of discharged residents on the left-hand side. And the same for planned. Your out of facility you can use if the resident is for whatever reason leaving the facility. So if they're going on social leave, going on holiday, whatever reason, going to the hospital, going for a surgery or whatever, and they're out of the facility for more than 24 hours, you could use this out of facility because it just takes them out of the rounds and you don't have to sign off the medication. I would advise if they are leaving the facility for less than 24 hours, there's a different way of dealing with that, which is a bit easier to manage in terms of suspending the medication, and it just brings them back into the facility at the specified time. Go through that when we go through adding on medication in the next session.
Go back.
Your physical ID, it's not a mandatory box, it's just there for extra information should you want to use it. So some homes use a number ID system or something that identifies that client. You could use that for whatever ID number you might have in place. Some homes don't use it, some homes do. It's not mandatory. The NHS number is really important. That just has to have a number in there. So if you know it, then lovely, put it in. If you don't, it just wants a 10-digit number until you can come back and put in the proper NHS number. And then your code status is if they have a DNAR. Is that somebody?
She tried it.
I can't. Are you talking to me? I can't hear you then.
Yeah, I don't think they can hear you.
Let me just check.
Thank you.
There, I can hear you now. Oh my gosh. I can hear you now. So sorry. What have you been saying?
You couldn't hear any of us, I don't think, but you can hear us now. That's fine.
I can hear you now. Sorry, I bet you were thinking I'm so ignorant. I've just been talking over you. Did anyone have questions? I'll shut up for a minute. I'll answer questions if you've got them.
No, I don't think there's any questions. Oh, Sandra does.
See, for the start of the cycle, will that all be pre-populated with all the
I've done that for you already. I've pre-populated your cycle date for you already based on the day you're going live with the medication system. Can you hear me okay? You were looking at it. Yeah. So don't worry about your cycle dates. That's pre-populated. Once that first one's in there, it works it out going forward. So you don't need to worry about that. When you come to add on the medications, there's a bit about dates in there. So it will pre-populate at your monthly dates, but you might need to amend them according to whether it's, say, a course of antibiotics or something like that. But we'll come on to that when we come on to adding and improving the medication. At the point of adding the resident on, you don't need to worry about that. Does that answer that? Yeah. Perfect. Okay, let me go back to it. I'm so sorry about that, guys. Okay. So, where do we get to? Code status. So your code status is just if they have a DNAR in place, in situ. Essentially, these are the same things. It's just a different wording. So it's whichever you use in your region. But this will, by choosing these options, it will show up on the meds round in a little red emblem that tells them that they've got a DNAR or a DNACR. Okay. Once you've filled in all your detail, your photo is really easy to upload. You just need to be on the device that has the photos saved to. And then what you would do is press add or change. It takes you to file locations, and then you would just go and find the relevant photo. So some of the time when we've done this, the photos have been saved as a long load of letters and numbers. It's worth saving them as the initials of the resident so you know who you're adding in. Once you add that in as well, it will ask you when the photo's been taken, and then it will record the date that it's been uploaded as well for auditing purposes, so you know to change it. Once you've got all that detail in, press save. Oh, like need to put in a fake number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. And there we go. Once you've put all that detail in, press save. It then adds them into the left-hand side. And then you've got some other options at the bottom that have opened up. So you've got your 999 quick prints. That is a really handy tool if you have a resident that's had an accident, a fall or something, and the ambulance has come to take them into hospital, and you need to print off a MAR chart and relevant information straight away. You come into your residents and orders, click your 999 quick prints, and it sends it, those reports directly to the printer. So you don't need to wait around. You would just need to know which printer the laptop or whatever the device is that you're on is linked up to. You've got your suspend and orders. So this is what I was talking about. When your resident is out of the facility, if they're less than 24 hours out of the facility, you would come to suspend and orders, and you can suspend all of their medication for a period of time. So what will happen is it will be greyed out in the meds round from this time and this date, and then it will reappear in colour, ready to give, at the date that you specify and the time that you specify. So you don't have to worry about it. It's just setting it up once and then it all comes back into play. Whereas you're out of facility, you would have to choose out of facility, and then when they're back in the home, you would go back in and put them as in facility. So you would just have to remember to do that. Your change log. So your change log, everything is recorded on the system. It's one of the selling points of the system. It's really good for auditing. Your change log shows you exactly what's happened with the whatever you're on at the time. So for this instance, it's what have we done with this resident. It's telling me that I've created this resident. That's all that's happened so far. But if someone was to then come in and change the photo, it would let you know. If they've come in and changed date of birth, again, it would let you know. So you'd have a running account of what's happened with that resident. You'll see that button throughout the system as well. So when you're adding on meds, in the meds round, you'll see you've got an audit of everything, essentially. Your merge button. So the merge button you will very rarely need. It's there in case. So in the instance that you might have added on a resident, so we've just gone in and added this resident on manually, but then your pharmacist at the pharmacy has sent over data for this resident, and actually they've spelt the name slightly different, but everything else matches up. It will create two residents because it thinks it is that spelling mistake. It assumes it's a different resident. But it's the same because everything else matches up and it's clear that it's a spelling mistake. You could merge the two together, so you keep all of the relevant information, but you then just have the one resident. That's where you would use your merge button. We have no data in here at the moment, so I can't show you what that looks like, but essentially you would choose the one that you wanted to merge with. Okay, so that's your essentially adding on the bare bones of a resident. You've got these tabs down on the right hand side as well. So we're currently sat on the profile tab. You can, for this resident, so we have a vitals tab. You can record if you're just doing a vitals test for, say, blood pressure. You could record a one-off test here. You also have access to the history of it here as well. This would be just if they're kind of not relative to medication, because you can attach these vitals to specific medications. So say you need to take the pulse before you give a digoxin, we can set that up on the medication when we're adding on medications. This functionality here is just if it's a one-off separate from medication. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
If you're doing warfarin or something.
Okay.
Provided all that on your data.
Your info button. So please bear in mind that this is essentially an American system, so some of this might not be relevant, but some of it might be. You might choose to use this. You can, like I say, look, it's got all the insurance information. It's very kind of American orientated, but there are some fields in here that you might want to use. Not many people do though. The contacts, quite good to have, just an extra place to put those contacts. So again, you've got primary, secondary, physician. So if they wanted to put the doctor in there. The documents is where most people use. So this is where you can upload, and I think, Sandra, we were talking about this, about a DNAR, a copy of the DNAR document. So you could attach that here simply by you would press the add button at top right. It'll open up your fields for you. You'll go in and find the document. So again, you have to be on the device that's got all the documents saved on. And then you would just fill in the relevant information. So what is it? It's resident information or other. You'd put the title of what it is, description, and then save it once you've got all that detail in. Okay.
Lee, is that where we would put the PRN protocols?
No. So your PRN protocols, they will come under. So can you see where my cursor is? So we're currently in profile. Orders we're not going to worry about today because we're going to come to that when we add on medication, but info orders is where you're going to put your PRN protocols. So if I click on that, on the right hand side, you've got an add button. Once you press that add button, it opens up all of this, the details here. This is where you're going to put the details of your PRN protocol. So, I mean, it's up to you what you put in here, but this is a common example of what care homes use. So if we say paracetamol.
Do we want to have the DNA CPRs
We
and
said no
documents,
the other day.
everything as well as PCS? Do we want, or do we just want
No,
one
it's just the
place for that?
PRNs. We said no to DNR.
So you put the category as paracetamol PRN protocol, and then you would put the detail of that protocol in the details box. At the bottom, you'll see the start and end date. It's assuming that this information is going to be relevant for a long time to come. So it puts it on for 20 years. If for whatever reason this PRN protocol became null and void, or it's changed slightly, you need to add on a different one, you would just come into the end date and end it whenever was relevant. Really importantly, the tick boxes next to the dates is a bit of a bugbear of mine. It automatically ticks print P on PO, but you want all of them ticked for it to appear where you need it to be. So you want it to be on your MAR chart, you want it to show in the meds round before they start giving their medication, or whilst they're in the med round, so that they've got it to refer to. So really important that when you're adding on the PRN protocols, you tick all of these tick boxes. You've got that change log button there again. That just lets you know if anyone's come in and amended any PRN protocols or any of the information that you put here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lee, when we spoke the other day, you said if I sent them to you, you would put all the PRNs on for us.
Not the PRN protocols. I can put the homely remedies on.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So you can send them over to me whenever, and I'll add those on for you.
Okay.
But I will show you how to do it, so you know for future. It's just I can set them up as part of the config for you if you want me to. Now, if you did need to stop a PRN protocol, or it might be that you use this functionality for something else as well, if you just needed some information on there about the resident that any meds giver would need to know before they give the meds. If you needed to stop it for whatever reason and you change that end date, you still have access to this. So if I just save this so you can see what it looks like. I'm going to discontinue this resident, they won't be on your system. So it starts creating a list here. So I can see that's my paracetamol PRN. You would go into add and then add on any of the relevant PRN protocols. You could also use your pick from list, which is when I was in the kickoff, Sandra and John, I was saying about there's certain default bits of information that will be on here. So if it's common within the home, you can just tick it and it will appear in the list of relevant information. We can configure that list. So if there's anything in there that's not relevant, or if there's anything in there that you feel could be added, I can add that in for you, or I can amend that for you. Once I've got all of these in, if that piece of information then becomes irrelevant and I change it, so I'm going to stop it, save that, it takes it out of my list. That's because these are current information. If I needed to access or go back for audit purposes and see what was in that previous piece of information, I would go to show discontinued orders. and then I have my list of discontinued information, which I can then click on and see the detail of if I needed to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, so that's where your PRM protocols will be. You can start adding those on. You'd only be able to start adding those on if you add your residents on those. So that's why I kind of say, although the pharmacy will send that data, they won't be sending it for, I believe they're having their training, is it week commencing the 31st? No, they're having the training week commencing the 24th, I'm sure. So they'll start sending the data week commencing the 31st. So if you wait for them to send the data, you're not going to be able to start doing any of this other stuff until then. So it might be wise to add your residents on, so you can start adding on the PRM protocols in plenty of time. So that's your info orders. The last tab we've got here is tasks. So again, we can set up tasks relevant to certain medications. We would do that within when we're adding on the medications or approving medications, but you might need to set a task separate to that for a particular resident. I don't know, it might be to, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Can anybody think of an example? I'm going to use stock check, but another way of doing this. But I'll use it as an example because that's all I can think of at the moment. Oops, spelling is atrocious. So if I wanted to set a task to remind me to do a stock check on test defaults medication, we just fill in the detail. So my task is a stock check. The details would be, what do I need to do as part of that stock check? So count all medication. When am I scheduling it for? So when would I want to be doing that? So if I say tomorrow at not 12 o'clock, that's not a good time because that's lunchtime. Let's say 15:05. And it's going to send me a reminder in 15 minutes as default, but I can from this filter choose when it's going to remind me to do this task. So it could be an hour before, it could be that you don't want one set at all. So let's say an hour before I want it to remind me. Then you would just save it. Again, it starts creating a list of tasks for this resident. As they are completed, you can choose to see all the completed tasks should you need to for any auditing purposes. If you need to delete any, you've got your delete button at the top, and then if you need to add any new ones on, you've got your new button. But that is just one-off tasks. So anything to do with medication as an individual, you can do that and attach it to the actual medication. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Perfect. So I did mention, I've used this as an example, the stock check. However, on the profile, I go back to my profile of my resident and highlight it. And then at the bottom, I've got a little tick box that says enable stock check every, and then it's grayed out, but it says 28 days. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I tick that, it opens it all up. And essentially what this is going to do is set up a reminder for this resident and take me or give me the option to go straight into the stock check functionality. Okay, and I set that up here. So depending on how often you do stock checks for your residents, it might be that you do it every 2 weeks or whatever. But for this resident, I'm going to say every 28 days. So once every cycle, starting from today at 8 o'clock, it's going to remind me to do that stock check. And that will appear in our alerts to remind us to do that as well. And that will recur until I tell it to stop. That's going to recur every 28 days. But you need to make sure you've ticked that on their profile and saved it for it to do that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Is this all making sense?
Yeah.
I hope so. Okay. Essentially, that's everything for the user and the resident admin. Quite quite an easy session, this one. So do you want me to go through and add on a homely remedy now, or do you want me to do that as part of the add and approve session?
What's that, sorry, Lee?
Your homely remedies, I know you're going to send me the list of them, so I'll add them on, but do you want me to show you how to do that now? Because it works slightly different. So next session, we're going to be going through adding on medication and approving medication. And although homely remedy isn't medication, it's dealt with in a separate fashion on the system.
Yeah, that's fine.
So if I go through it now, it just then doesn't become confused with how we do the other part. So to add on your homely remedies, you're going to go to admin again. We are going to go to where it says settings, and then I'm hoping you can see this drop down, because sometimes you can't. We're going to then go to orders library. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay. In your orders library, that's where you can set up templates for medication. So on the left hand side, we've got nothing set up in the system at the moment, because this is your live system. So I'm going to add in, and you have to give it a category name. So we're going to say homely remedy.
Okay.
Okay, and then that creates that category for us. So then I can highlight that, and then I can now add in medication. You are able to set up kind of templates for vitals here and treatments. So a treatment would be something like a peg flush that you want recording, but it wouldn't necessarily be a prescribed drug like a cream or anything like that. So we're going to add on a medication, because that's what a homely remedy would be. Okay, now there's a bit of my screen that you can't quite see because of the resolution. So at the top, you can't quite see it because of the size of my screen, but it says title. And in there, you would want to put, this is what you're going to see. So how would you want, are we going to do paracetamol first?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's say paracetamol, and you can change this if afterwards if you want to. Paracetamol. Okay, and then next to the title, you've got a little tick box that says homely remedy. Now that needs to be ticked for it to appear where we need it to appear within the meds round to be able to give it. So you must always make sure that that's ticked. And then we're just going to fill in this detail. So this, you'll get used to this screen next session tomorrow, because we're going to predominantly be working on something similar. So we want to put the name of the medication in. So it'd be a paracetamol. Tablets, do tablet. Ooh. Tablet. As you start typing, so the system has a drug database. Again, it will start accruing different medications that are common to your home. And as it does, in this box below where I've started typing, it will start creating lists of your common medications. So you can just choose from that list. Or when you start beginning with it, you've got the show all button. So if you type paracetamol, press show all, it will give you a list of all the available ones that you could potentially choose. Or you can just retype it. So we've got paracetamol tablets. Let's put the strength in there, because we don't just want to be giving any old. Paracetamol 500 milligram tablets. And then just put the strength and the form in the next two boxes. Now your form box has got a drop down. There is no rhyme or reason. It's in no order whatsoever. So I always find it's easier just to free type. Okay. The diagnosis, so we'd be giving this for residents that are in pain. Your equivalent to box is anything that you know by brand. So if it's a particular brand of paracetamol that you are used to seeing, because the medication has to be the medication name, you could put the brand of the medication in the equivalent to. It's just another kind of identifier. I'm not going to come on to these tick boxes today, because we'll talk more about those when we're adding on medication in the next session, and we don't need these for a paracetamol. Now, with your homely remedies, do you want to manage the stock on the system as well, I assume?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, so in order to do that, you want to track the inventory. So always tick track inventory. It will assume the form that we've put at the top here as the units. So we can count tablets, that's fine. We're going to leave that as so. We need to tell the system where these paracetamol have come from. So where generally do you get them from? Is it from a pharmacy or over the counter?
Pharmacy.
Would it be Houlihan's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the route would be how they're taking that medication. So let's put oral. And then on the right hand side, we've got a couple of options that are really useful in terms of particularly paracetamol or any kind of painkillers. So you've got your weight between admins. So if I tick weight between admins, it brings up this box and I can free type in there how many hours I want to specify before I can give this paracetamol again. So from that first administration, and we're going to put 4 hours in there because usually it's 4 to 6 hours. If I try to give that paracetamol within that 4-hour period, it's going to bring up a warning box and say, are you sure you want to be doing this? It's been X amount of time since you've given a paracetamol. It won't fully stop you because there will be scenarios where, say, the doctor might allow it. So it will allow you to press continue, but it brings that warning up to say, are you sure? Just to make you second think. And then with paracetamol, you might want to follow it up to see if it's worked. So you've got the require follow-up result. As default, your follow-up time is, I can't remember what we said, it was 2 hours, I think. So if it says use default, it'll be 2 hours, or you can specify at this point to say, actually, I want to go check in an hour's time to see if that's been effective. But we'll leave that as default. The instructions are as what's on the box. So it's usually take
Give 2 tablets between.
Every 4
to 6
hours. Take 1 to 2 tablets every 4 to 6 hours, no more than
8 tablets per 24-hour period.
Usually the instructions, isn't it? Okay. And then with this one, it would be generally your homely remedies will be a PRN basis because it is generally as they need it. As default, it will put all medication as routine. So you need to make sure you tick PRN and then it will just be available whenever. Your minimum and maximum you need to specify because, again, if you go over that, it's going to warn you. So in the instructions, it's saying 1 to 2. So minimum dose would be 1 tablet. Maximum dose would be 2 tablets. And then you would just save it. Once you just cast your eyes over, make sure you've not missed anything off. You would save it. It's just so, it's going to ask you whenever you're adding on a new medication, whenever you're discontinuing a medication, whenever you deselect a controlled drug, it's going to ask you why you're doing it. So let's put in here, setting up paracetamol homely. Okay. And then that adds that into the list. So now that's going to be available to anybody that we've specified can have the approved homely remedies. Is that okay? Is that quite?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, easy enough, isn't it? It's just, I like to do it separate because it is, although it's a medication, we deal with it slightly different to the medications that we're going to be adding on to the profiles. So we'll kind of go through that other process tomorrow. But essentially, that's everything I need to go through today. It's one of the shorter sessions. Does anybody, I'm going to take it off so that you are not looking at yourselves. Has anybody got any questions about residents admin, user admin, anything like that?
Question about on-base forum.
Okay, so if you've not got any questions, I can leave you to carry on with your day. Tomorrow, The session is slightly longer because we will go through different scenarios of what different schedules you can do on the system. So I will go through kind of basic bits, and then I will ask you for any scenarios you might think of that you have to deal with in your home at the moment. So if you have a think about what they might be, and then we can kind of cover all of those tomorrow as well. But if nobody's got any questions, that's about it.
Yeah.
Lee, can I just ask you something? You've set me up and gave me a password, but I don't know what it is, so I can get in.
Sorry, it's password. It's just password. But
Right.
now when you log in, Sandra, it will ask you to change your password straight away. Yeah.
All right. Thanks very
Thank you,
much.
Lee.
That's okay. No worries.